writes and says your book helped. But at another level, what I was also drawn to that she said that she was either the coordinator or something of a Buddhist group, and I have been trying to meditate for about 40 years. My teacher is Yogananda, and I have been a follower as in my minimal ability for a long time. But one of the reasons that besides her nice, sweet, like ask, was the challenge of like thinking sometimes that, well, because I meditate, like I'm going to be able to cope with everything, or because I'm a Buddhist or a yogi, that life, I can figure it out, or life will be easy. And one of the really interesting experiences for me, in particular, not just in my own life, but trying to teach forgiveness for decades, is that often meditation is not enough, and that there are times when spiritual practice is not, I don't know what the word is, insufficient, or probably more likely we're not deeply enough attuned to the spiritual practice, rather than the problem being in the practice. It's probably more in us. But I have seen a lot of suffering that is unnecessary because of that. Yeah, I'm not a Buddhist, but in the Bay Area here, I have given talks to all sorts of Buddhist groups. I've given workshops at Spirit Rock. Um, but forgiveness, and again, one of the reasons I got up at 7:30 in the morning was forgiveness is a particularly difficult experience. And I have found that, I'm going to say, just simple generic mindfulness has generally not been a strong enough tool. Um, that it cuts at some of the most basic questions of what it means to be a human being, the issues that forgiveness brings up. That it reminds us, and not that Buddhism doesn't cover all this terrain. I mean, I'm not minimizing Buddhism. I mean, the central tenets are, you're not going to be happy in this world, so stop trying. Like, but I mean, that's like the central precept of, in a world of relentless change and dissolution and our relentless grasping, um, it's never going to work. But forgiveness reminds us of often impermanence. It can be in very painful ways. Like if your partner abandons you, or if you get fired from a job, or somebody kills somebody that you love. Um, Impermanence is like right there. Or when people don't do what you want them to do or behave badly, you get reminded that we don't own anything. I mean, that nothing belongs to us. That we're all just like temporary visitors here, and making stuff up about, this is mine and that belongs to me, and this is, I own this. And we don't, nobody on this, from what I could see on this planet, likes to be reminded of the fact that we're like motel guests. That we check in for a little while and then we check out again. And so the impermanence and the insufficiency of this life to fully satisfy, while they are chronically true, when we're badly hurt or disappointed or mistreated, the truth gets bigger. You know, it's like it's one thing to know about impermanence, and it's another thing to be told that your partner of 20 years has found a younger bottle. You know, that's that's making impermanence into a very tangible thing. And it's not easy. You know, it's just not easy. And it requires a certain grit to like accept the world on its terms, even when the world has like really challenged our sense of control and has really reminded us of how vulnerable we are. And it's one thing to have a theoretical understanding of dukkha or of impermanence and of suffering. But it's another thing to have a very tangible object that's caused that suffering. It's very different. That, oh, they're the reason why I'm unhappy, not the very nature of this life. And so we end up over identifying our suffering with an object or a person or an experience. And so unless we are deeply grounded in a meditative awareness or a use of the witness, we're just thrown. You know, it's just messy and awful and lots of suffering, and I'm not sure that that's wrong. And what I have come to, at least trying to figure out my tiny little piece in this, is one, these kind of experiences help humble us. Like they help eliminate some of the conceit that we walk around with all day, even as what good Buddhists we are. You know, like it punctures the narcissistic certainty that we all like to walk around with. But two, if we're honest about it in any way, and we use our suffering wisely, then we recognize that how common it is. And then if we're lucky or good or both, we become more compassionate because we see, well, like, shit happens. It happened to me, but it also happens to everybody else. It's not like I got a special delivery package. This is life. But we resist it. I mean, that's one of the things. We resist the experience. Most people that I know who are even novices or even further along on spiritual paths, most of us try really hard to do spiritual bypass and like not really acknowledge our like flawed, vulnerable, raw humanity, which suffers. And we often try to either meditate it away or talk about our spiritual consciousness being above it. I do believe that until we achieve some pretty profound equanimity, suffering's there. And it's probably designed to help us like stop thinking we can be better than anything and to cultivate some more compassion for everybody's experience, everybody's. But for whatever reason, forgiveness is like, it's like the graduate school where like some of the other practices are like the elementary school practices. It's like forgiveness is really, really hard. And so when I get like, again, nice entreaties from somebody who says, I went through a difficult time, I think, well, like, welcome to planet Earth. But when they also say that, like, I worked through it, and I think that's our task, like, is to take the difficulties that are abundant on this planet and do a modest amount of suffering so that we chip away at our certainty, but also cultivate this more universal compassion, that it's never just us. Never. It's like I remember teaching, I don't know, 20 years ago, a class at Stanford, and some woman was like just ranting and raving about how awful her ex-husband was. And I mean, she had a full head of steam, like this was the worst ex-husband ever created by planet Earth. And no, it was like I wanted to meet the guy, it was like he was so bad. um I remember, like, cool it, so I remember saying to her, or asking her, this was a generation or more ago, I said, like, do you ever read the news or watch TV? And she looked at me and I said, well, do you ever watch or read the news? Like, do you get a newspaper? This was when people got newspapers. So she said, yeah, I get the San Francisco Chronicle, the local paper. And I said, well, what's in the newspaper? She said, well, all sorts of disasters, and people fighting each other and corrupt politicians and all sorts of stuff. And I said, when you read that newspaper, do you think those are real people? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, my guess is you don't. Like, you may read about, 400 people die in an earthquake in Istanbul, but I don't think you believe that that's real people. It's only when your husband left you that you allow you, the only real person, to suffer. Everybody else is fake and isn't really going through anything. It's just what you read in the paper or watch on TV, but it's not real. And so this finally forced you to realize and be real about the fact that planet Earth hurts. But it's not that something unusual happened to you. It's that you're so deeply defended against all the other suffering. So this becomes a newsflash to you. Like, oh my God, people are nasty on planet Earth. And so what I tried to explain to her was she got a taste of life on planet Earth, but it's been going on all over the place, and many people suffer way more than she is, and she couldn't care less. She doesn't care. It's funny because one of the other ways that I used to poke at, like, Earthlings' hubris was like somebody would be ranting, and I'm trying to remember some of the more trivial things that people have ranted or raved about. And I'm not suggesting that partners be nasty to each other at all, but it's not among the worst stuff that planet Earth delivers. Um, but I remember somebody was ranting or raving about something, nothing so calamitous. And I remember asking them, like, right now, you're complaining about this. I mean, do you realize, this is what I said, that I think the research is like 30, 40,000 children under a certain age, like 5, will starve to death today in this world. I said, is that anywhere in your consciousness? And they said, no. What does that mean? I said, just look at how small your concern is. Just how infinitesimal your vision is about what is going on here. That I know it was a modest thing, like, let's say a hotel lost their reservation or somebody made a real error, but it was tolerable. And this person was all huffed up and puffed up and angry. And so all I did was say, and do you know that there will be every day this week, like 30, 40,000 children under a certain age will starve to death. And where is your concern? And I was not ever advocating that you look for hotels that give you bad service. But it was also there to remind us, one, that this is what this birth means. That we will face certain difficulties based on the rules of this planet. And secondly, we have a choice as to what we do with our attention. I mean, you all know that from meditation practice, but we have a choice. Like, we can focus our attention relentlessly on ourself, and that will lead to an extra dose of suffering. Or we can distribute our attention a little more broadly, and that will result in a little less suffering. There's no elimination of suffering, but we have some control as to what we do with it. So in the work that I have done, best definition that I've ever had about forgiveness, not mine, of course, is giving up all hope for a better past. Like, that's what forgiveness is. It's giving up all hope for a better past, which is a nice way of saying, like, make peace with your life. But the woman who came up with that saying, give up all hope for a better past, her daughter was murdered. And that's how she came through it, was recognizing that today she can practice giving up all hope for a better past. And so she can be in her current life more fully. Now, the caveat to that is, and this is where spiritual bypass can be a real problem. The caveat to that is human beings are designed to grieve their losses. So from the point of loss or pain or suffering to giving up all hope for a better past, it takes time. And it's supposed to take time. Different people have different schedules, but it's supposed to take time, again, for one reason, that it's designed to humble and shake up our false complacency. Like, these things are designed to shake us up so that we become capable of seeing life more clearly. You know, I was part of a study group for a while with one of the people who founded Spirit Rock. And I don't remember if I was there when he gave the talk, but it's a Buddhist center here. And he was talking about, you know, old age, sickness, and death as like the universe's like curriculum that's there to remind us of truth. It's not a hindrance alone. It's a well-designed reminder not to get too comfortable. You know, not to think that you have a 80-year lease, you may have a 40-year lease. But it's designed for clarity of vision. It's designed just like, you know, when you get into a really meditative place and you can actually be okay with the endless change and endless up and down of life, you know, because it's all in flux all the time. But we don't, I mean, I don't want that. And most of the humans that I know don't want that. We want to have what we believe is ours. And so when you one of the reframes is these losses and the process of grief, as horrible as it can be, is to help teach us things that are true. You know, that person, I didn't own them, or they didn't have to do what I wanted. Those are truths. Or as a human being, I'm going to be invited in sometimes to experience the pain that exists all over this planet. Like, those are just truths. And grief is the healthy time to break down some of our defenses so that we more deeply can see reality. You know, so that we can more clearly see, oh, that's right. I'm a normal human on planet Earth. So I get these things. You know, they happen to me too. It's not just for the people who don't really matter at the other end of a newspaper or a website or a TV. They're actual people. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we can use our experiences to deepen our compassion for humans. And that's one of the key processes by which we forgive. Because it's not personal. It's partly a teaching. And if nothing ever happened like this, we'd stay so deep in illusion and so deep in a self-centered bubble that we'd be lost. You know, so in part, these things shake us. The other piece that we learned around this forgiveness thing is it reminds us when things go wrong or they go south or people betray us or abandon us, nothing reminds us more of the need to appreciate what we have when we have it. Nothing. Nothing reminds us more. And since the truth is it's all impermanent, there's some real difficult learning there. It's all impermanent. Our body's impermanent. Everything's impermanent. So it can allow us, the process of a forgiveness can remind us to appreciate what we have. So rather than just talking for an hour, let me give you a practice around that. That's, I don't know what the word is. It's just nicer than just listening to somebody's voice. I try to teach myself that if I've talked for a half hour, it's time to shut up. It's one of my first lessons of appropriate teaching is shut up. But let me give you a simple practice. It's all the stuff we do is short periods of meditation, but this is not designed primarily as a meditation practice. I'm just trying to frame it, but I am going to ask you to, pull away from distraction and allow yourself to close your eyes and go inward. But you'll see that it's not a long meditation practice. Okay, so if everybody out there would be willing to please, like, if you're staring at your cell phone, put it away. Just be willing to shut down the external besides me and allow your eyes to close. And for this really simple practice, all I'm going to ask you to do is allow your attention to go inward. And allow yourself to let go of like thoughts of the future and thoughts of the past, and simply bring your attention inward so that that inward attention begins to just gently quiet your breathing. And what's really helpful is if you can, as most meditative traditions do, if you could locate your attention in your belly and allow your shoulders and chest and neck to relax. So you want to locate your attention in your belly. And you simply want your breathing to become gentle and soft. And if there's a conscious attention, it's allow your abdomen to expand when you inhale. That's a very simple focus, but it really forces your nervous system to recognize that you're quieting down when you expand your abdomen with the inhalation. So you want to really cultivate a quiet enough so that the natural rhythm of breathing will occur. And you want to have your shoulders relaxed enough and your whole body in a place of like trust that it's okay to be soft and I don't have to tighten up, so that my breathing can just be as if I'm safe. And that means when you inhale, your abdomen very gently expands. And when you exhale, contracts. And then is all I want you to do is remember a time when you knew you were loved. I just want you to picture a time and remember it when you absolutely knew that you were loved. And I want you to see if just for a moment you can allow in that knowledge that you are loved, that you are lovable, and that if you can just allow that for a moment to be felt, like in your own heart, just that you are loved. You just want to soften. You want to soften into that. And then that's enough. Let that image go. Just take another breath or two into your belly and very gently allow your eyes to open. And what the only other instruction is when you allow your eyes to open, like don't fidget, just sit for a moment. Just sit. And then the I mean the piece of this that is so relevant for forgiveness, and this is, you know, much of this was taken, or these ideas, from the Dalai Lama's The Art of Happiness book, where like inside of us we have access to qualities of kindness and love and gentleness and compassion and forgiveness, but we have to practice going there. And when we're in a grudge or grievance state, we're always practicing going someplace else, but the kind part of us. So we're practicing saying nasty things in our mind, or practicing feeling sorry for ourselves, or practicing contempt, or practicing revenge, or practicing whatever it is we're practicing. But those practices condition our nervous system to associate whatever that event was with our practices. So we get used to being angry at something. And of course, whatever you practice becomes more likely. So if each of us practices 100 times, like my ex is a bum, that becomes your association with your ex. Oh, bum. And so you become adrenalized anytime the word X is anywhere in your life. Like it could be X-lax or it could be anything. And you're going to have an adrenalized reaction because of the association that you have practiced in your mind to X. And you're going to blame that reaction on your ex-husband or your ex-wife or anything, your ex-dog. It doesn't matter. But you're going to blame them or it for your practiced reaction. And so that's how we become a victim. That's the best that we could understand as to what victim status was the practiced reaction of hostility or self-pity or blame that we then embed in our nervous system. And so we then think it's true going forward that they are the continued cause of our distress. But what we want to practice is moments where there is no distress, where we're at peace, we're calm, and we're open to goodness. Because that's the way that you counter condition your nervous system. When you're not like protective, like you have to, in order to forgive, you have to find a place in you or me of vulnerability and trust. Can't do it otherwise. But it doesn't have to be that, you go back to the ex and say, I saw you wrong. It just has to be that inside of you or me, there's a place of safety and of trust. It's in us. And then we find that we don't need the resentment so much to be safe. What the resentment and bitterness were doing was trying to protect us. And then we see with a little bit of practice that it feels better to protect us with kindness. That's what feels better. And that leads to different kinds of thinking. So instead of protecting ourselves, which is fine for a while, it makes great sense to protect ourselves for a while with, boy, that ex was the biggest bum in the history of the planet. And, thank God the whole world doesn't know this person because they'd be dead by now, this person, because everybody would see what a shit they are. That's great for a while. It's a wonderful protection. But unfortunately, we practice that protection way too long and way too well. And so it keeps us from life's goodness. It's a great, great, great protection. I mean, just a fabulous protection. Fabulous. But it's not long term. And unless we can find other ways to hold the situation, we become a prisoner of our stress-based protection. Like we then become angry or bitter or mistrustful. And we continue to blame it on them. Like I've seen people at 55 years of age tell me with a straight face that their crappy life was their mother's fault, I have to stop from laughing out loud. I do. Like, you got to be kidding me. You're 55. Like, who's responsible for your life? You or your mother? But I've had people with an absolutely straight face, like, tell me, yeah, my mother ruined my life. And I'm thinking, I mean, this is me. I'm a New Yorker, so we're naturally like snarky. But I'm thinking, okay, maybe your mother ruined the first 20 years of your life, and then you ruin the next 30. It's not her fault. It's never anybody else's fault that you don't heal. Never. That's on you. It may be their fault that they did what they did, and if there are consequences, use them. But it's never their fault that you didn't heal or I didn't heal. That's not their fault. That's not their responsibility. And I once, and I've been taught by seeing people. Like, when I developed this, there was nobody teaching me any of this. Like, I had to pluck this out of whatever. I mean, this is 25 years ago. So, and it's not that the ideas are new. I mean, this stuff has been around forever. I just had to pluck it out of contemporary psychology. But I remember I was once teaching at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur in California. And it's right on the Pacific Ocean, and it's beautiful. And we were in a room with a bay window looking out at the Pacific Ocean. So it's gorgeous. I mean, drop dead gorgeous. And 30 people show up, and I ask them what's going on. And one after another, because it's a forgiveness thing, um, 30 people start to complain. Like, they just start to complain. Like, they sit down, the Pacific Ocean is right there. And I don't tell them, okay, now it's time for you to sit down and complain. That's not coming from me. It's like they sit down and I say, well, what brings you here? So not one of them was able to see the Pacific Ocean because they had such a patterning of complaining. And even after 20 people had complained, not one of them said, wow, you've heard enough complaining. I'm going to say something nice. Not one person said that. And I thought, how peculiar this is. Like, after 20 complaints, you'd have thought we'd have enough complaining. But everybody had to throw their little complaining into the ring because they thought that's what their job was at a forgiveness seminar, to be miserable. And it's not your job. It's never your job unless there's active grief. But what I realized then was nobody can stop us from complaining about our lives if we don't want to stop. Even if the Pacific Ocean is right there, even if you're wealthy enough to afford a weekend by the beach in California, if that's not enough for you, it's you. And yet, always, and I'll tell you this, when I was teaching there, even though I literally got tired, I couldn't take teaching there because it was too much complaining. Like, people would go to, no, so many people go to these like centers to take different training so they can complain to different people. they're not actually looking for health, they're looking for outlets to complain. I mean that it's part of their, I don't know what it is. But I realized that like you could, after 10 people complain, you could stop and say, wait a second, this is us. Human life hurts. You don't need my particular flavor right now. We have enough to work with, right? We have enough here, thank you. We don't need mine. Mine doesn't matter. It's just more of the same. But that would require humility and compassion. And a willingness to become soft. And that's what people don't have, is that willingness to become soft, to feel their vulnerability and to let go of their armoring. But it doesn't require the offender or anybody to apologize or change. It requires us to cultivate some trust and some, I'm going to say, appreciation of just like what a gift it is to be alive. So let me do one more practice and then I'll take a few questions, but I actually have to go meet somebody for breakfast in a little while. Let me give you one more practice. Again, if you'd all please close your eyes. And, sit up reasonably straight. I mean, again, I'm not a formal meditation teacher for this. Sit up reasonably straight. Allow your eyes to close. And just settle in again. Settle in for a moment. And settle in again to the center of your body. Please settle into your center. Bring your breathing into your center. Bring your attention into your center. And soften your shoulders and your chest so you can breathe deeply. Relax your shoulders and your chest so that your belly does the breathing. Again, allow yourself to soften so that when you inhale, your abdomen expands. And when you exhale, your abdomen contracts. And then just with the next inhalation, as you inhale, just see if you can say thank you for that breath. Just as you inhale, allow yourself to feel thank you for keeping me alive, allowing my body to work, just for giving me an opportunity to be part of this mystery. But just say thank you when you inhale. And when you exhale, just let the breath go. And then inhale again and say thank you. Just picture, say thank you for something, someone you love, something profound, but just inhale some moment of gratitude based on the breath. Just thank you. So inhale, thank you, exhale, relax. And then one of the inhales, just recognize that this breath is temporary and it's a gift. And just be appreciative of the fact that at least for this while, it's yours. And just say thank you. And then that's enough of just inhaling and reminding yourself what there is and exhaling and softening it. Just take a breath or two and allow your eyes to open. And it's just another reminder of like forgiveness is in us, and it exists in our softness and vulnerability and kindness. It's not out there, and it doesn't rest with or in anybody else. It's in us. And the only way to access this is through softness and gentleness and vulnerability and compassion and kindness. Those bring our natural forgiveness. It helps it come out. And when we've been hurt, we practice the opposite. We practice stuffing our kindness and compassion and gentleness away. And for a period of time, that's essential. As a long-term strategy, it's pretty damn stupid, and you can see what it's done to our planet. No, it's a terrible long-term strategy. Anyway, if somebody wants to write on the chat a question or two, I'll take a couple, but that's fun. I don't think I've ever done a conversation with people in India. It's interesting to me. It's just, it's remarkable, actually. I mean, how far away this is, and that it's what, 9 o'clock at night there.
Yes.
That's amazing. So if you want to write a question in or two, I'll take it before, but otherwise I have a breakfast to go to, and I thank you for the
Thank you.
invitation.
So thank you for the beautiful practice. We have 2 questions that have come in.
How do you
One
keep
question
the
that has come in.
forgiveness constant?
Constant.
You don't. Nothing is constant. That's like one of the noble truths, right? Nothing is constant. It takes practice, and it takes effort, and it takes attention, and it takes will. You do get better at it with practice, but it's never constant, just like contempt is never constant. Nothing is constant. It's all in flux. And is healing really possible? Oh, yeah, everybody knows that's true. We've all seen people who have healed from anything. We've all seen it. what we wonder about is if we have enough motivation to heal ourselves. That's what we wonder. And we blame ourselves at times. How do we practice self-forgiveness? That's a good question. Self-forgiveness requires generally an extra step. And it can be harder because what we acknowledge with self-forgiveness is that we did something that wasn't okay. So it starts with truth-telling. And it's a good use of mindful practice. You know, to be able to go inside and see yourself clearly. So self-forgiveness starts with awareness, like, oh, I really did this. Then some degree of accountability, which means if I did something wrong, let me apologize or make amends. That's crucial for self-forgiveness. And then after making amends, then we have the opportunity to let it go. But we have to be honest about it first. We have to do something about it, like help somebody if we've harmed them, help ourselves if we've harmed ourselves, or apologize. But there's an accountability piece of self-forgiveness. And that's the challenge of it. Anyway, I thank you all for your time. This was fun. I'd be happy to do this again. It was such a kick speaking to people from so far away. So thank you all very much for your attention. And yeah, I hope to see your faces again sometime. Thank you.
Have a nice breakfast.
We look forward to having you again with us. And I guess something to be grateful to the pandemic for, that here we are connected with you because of the pandemic. What were the odds, right? Yeah, so I'll extend an invitation again, Dr. Luskin, and I hope you will accept that.
So far away.
And
Have a good evening. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us. I hope this has been beneficial to you, and do look up his books, and there's a lot of online teachings that are available. I have used them and I tell you they work. So yeah, have a good evening, and hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Suruchi. Bye.
Thank you, Suruchi. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.